I want to welcome you on behalf of the James C. Hormel Gay and Lesbian Center. My name's Karen Sundheim, and I'm the program manager here, and I want to thank you all for coming out tonight on such short notice. I especially want to thank the writers and poets who are here tonight. I want to thank also our Public Affairs Department, Michelle Jeffers and Rosalie Merlin, for helping put this together, and also for Kenny Avila, who on a couple hours' notice is videotaping this. And hopefully we'll be able to stream this on our website. So I want to ask the people, be careful not to block the podium, and that the readers try and stay still enough so that we don't lose you. And if you can turn off your cell phones, that would be great. This is a very special gathering tonight as we remember and celebrate the life and the words of our sister poet, Adrienne Rich. We were very touched by the outpouring of enthusiasm and love for Adrienne that made this almost spontaneous event possible. I know this room is very small, so we didn't have a time to get a bigger room, and there's limited seating, so if someone really needs a seat, perhaps someone can generously give theirs. There are more seats? Raise your hand if there's a seat next to you. There's actually in the back corner there's a seat. There is a program, which I hope you all have. If you need more, we have extra copies. The program lists who is speaking tonight, and we have a very limited time, so each poet or writer will only have a couple of minutes to share a favorite Adrienne Rich piece and to say something about how he or she was influenced or inspired by her. So unfortunately, this means each person will not be individually introduced, because then we would be going on all night, which would be great, except that the library will kick us out. So all the speakers are listed on the program, and we'll do it in that order. So there's one person, our first speaker, who I'm going to introduce, Jack Litewka, who was a close friend of Adrienne Rich for over 40 years. Jack met Adrienne in 1967 when he was accepted into the MFA program in poetry at Columbia University's Graduate School of the Arts. He is a longtime Bay Area resident who knew Adrienne on both coasts and over many decades as a poet and a comrade. So welcome, Jack Litewka.
I'm going to try and read my notes. I wrote way too much and have scribbled out a lot in order to meet the time limit, so I may stumble now and then, and I apologize in advance for that. Each of you has a unique relationship with Adrienne Rich. You probably have read a lot of her poetry, a lot of her prose. Perhaps years ago, one of her lines opened up a world for you, or validated what you had thought and felt but had never heard expressed so powerfully. Perhaps a phrase slayed you. My comments will focus on Adrienne the friend, rather than Adrienne the great poet, or the famous lesbian and feminist. I was a senior at Berkeley in 1967 when I applied for the School of the Arts MFA program at Columbia University. I loved New York City. I assumed Columbia would find some good poet teachers, and I applied, sent in a manuscript, and was accepted. At the time, they weren't announcing who the teachers were, but I decided to go anyways because I wanted to live in Manhattan. As best as I can recall, I learned about who the teachers were a few months before the program started in September of 1967. And the teachers turned out to be Adrienne Rich and Stanley Kunitz. The name Adrienne Rich rang a very, very vague bell. I didn't know who it was. I thought I had maybe seen her name or read a poem of hers, but I was going nuts because I didn't know who it was, but I knew I'd seen something. So I went through my poetry bookshelf and looked and looked and looked and looked, and finally found a volume, American Poetry, 1965. On the cover it says, price 1 shilling. 20 pages of poetry, and it was intended for a British audience who was interested in poetry but who didn't know who American poets were. So who are the poets listed on the cover, and each of whom has one poem? Robert Lowell, Anne Sexton, Sylvia Plath, Theodore Roethke, William Stafford, Adrienne Rich, Donald Justice, and James Dickey. So I discovered who she was. I reread the poem at the time I rediscovered it and remembered that I'd actually learned a lot about the music and the song and poetry, and specifically a lot about half rhymes and internal rhymes and how to use them and how to make something come alive by their use. So I got very excited about having Adrienne Rich be my teacher. When I got to New York and when I met her, she was 38 years old. She was married. She had 3 sons, aged 7, 8, and 12, or 8, 9, and 12. Not yet widely known across the country, mostly known in the Boston, New York corridor as an up-and-coming poet. And a seemingly conventional life that did not foretell the changes that were to come. During the first year of the MFA program, there was a student strike at Columbia, and the university closed down. And we, meaning the students and Adrienne, talked about whether we should just skip the year or stop meeting in classes, and we decided that we would not meet in the campus building, but Adrienne offered her home as a place for us to meet, discuss politics, discuss the student strike, talk about food, drink wine, and if anyone was in the mood to share a poem and talk about it. Unlike many iconic figures in culture in America and elsewhere, Adrienne was not an egotist. She was not a narcissist. She did not want or need a following, was even disturbed when some followings began to appear. But what she did have was a laser focus on discovering why she felt what she felt, and in a larger sense, discover her truth about people of all sorts, about culture and power. And this fed her poetry and later fed her prose writings. Because of severe arthritis, she could not march in the streets with us. But after a march, and there were many in New York City during those years, we would meet at her house, and she would ask us about what had happened, who had spoken, exactly what was said, what was the atmosphere like, and she just had a thirst for finding out what was happening out there. Excuse me a second while I get my glasses. My eyes are starting to blur. From her couch, from her desk, and from increasing travel later in life, from reading books and magazines, newspapers, as well as asking a lot of questions of the people who moved through her life and whom she met when she traveled. She had one question on her mind, and it was an unspoken question. But the question was, what could she contribute given her skills and physical limitations? The answer to that question is within each of us who has ever read her work, and is the reason we're gathered here this evening. Adrienne was a wonderful friend. Whether you wanted to talk about poetry or politics, whether you wanted her feedback on some poems, whether you just needed to talk about life and share a bottle of wine or a stiff drink, she made herself available. She was a great listener, an active and attentive listener, and you knew that because of the questions she asked in response to what you had said. She loved a good conversation, whatever the topic. She would speak honestly, sometimes gently, and sometimes roughly, depending upon, I think, what she surmised as something, as what her friends needed or wanted. A gentle push, a subtle suggestion, a verbal club over the head. She shifted gears and modes with the situation. For those of you who do not know Adrienne personally or saw her only at a public reading or at a seminar or workshop, it would be natural to assume that she was deeply dedicated to achieving a more just world, was adamant about exposing falsehood in language and in actions, believed deeply in the power of poetry, and angry about a whole lot of things that were wrong with the world. All that is true. It also needs to be said that she was not like that all the time. Adrienne appreciated beauty of many sorts. She loved good writing. She loved music. She loved theater. She was psychologically astute, and I don't mean that she was a quote-unquote sensitive poet. I mean that she had an ability to read people's emotions and motivations and respond in an appropriate way. Adrienne loved Michelle Cliff, the novelist and her partner of 35 years. She loved her 3 sons, Jacob and David and Pablo, and she loved her grandchildren and many others. Perhaps a surprise to some, Adrienne loved to laugh. I can't remember a time over 40 years of conversation when we met and talked and we did not have moments of hilarity, moments when we had body-convulsing laughter about one of our own foibles, about some absurdity in the world, about the ironies of life. Yes, there were times when Adrienne was depressed, but that, amazingly, never paralyzed her. It made her all the more determined to make a difference in the world, particularly for those who had not enjoyed the privileges that she had. Yes, she was, from her desk and her typewriter, and later from her computer, a fighter. My wife and I visited Adrienne and Michelle at their Santa Cruz home a couple of months before she died. It was clear to me that she was very frail.
We're with you, Jack. You have all of our support. Please continue.
I'm trying. And this was probably the last time that we would see her, because she made it clear that it was time for her to hunker down with Michelle and her 3 sons who visited from New York and Los Angeles on an almost weekly basis, to make some decisions so that others would not be left with a mess to clean up after her, and to use the little time and energy remaining to complete her life in as close a manner as was to what she wanted as was possible. Our conversation quickly skipped over her medical condition and, as always, turned to literature, politics, food, family updates. She was not angry all the time. She was not a grim zealot. She loved to laugh, and I think she would want you to remember that. Despite all the horrors in the world, despite all the wrongs that needed righting, she loved to laugh. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lucy Jane Bledsoe, and when Karen asked me to read for a couple minutes tonight and talk for a couple minutes about what Adrienne Rich meant to me, I just couldn't imagine what I would say. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say I would not be here if it weren't for Adrienne Rich's poetry. And I asked myself, well, define here, and we'd be here all night. So let me just say this. Adrienne was so far out in front with her wild patience, with her dream of a common language, being part of a cultural vanguard. She was part of a cultural vanguard, the likes of which I miss terribly today. She didn't ask to be included or admitted into the institutions of an unhealthy culture. She wrote her way to somewhere new and just, to a place of extraordinary beauty and love. So to keep it simple, I just got out all my Adrienne Rich books, which is all of them, stacked them up, and realized that Pat and I both had a copy of Dream of a Common Language that we brought to our relationship. And so I thought, okay, we have two of those. I'll choose to read from that. Then I thought, well, since Adrienne taught me so much about love, I would read from Pat's copy. So I opened her copy and saw that she had circled the title of one poem, and she must have circled this long before we ever met each other. So I thought, okay, I'll read that poem. Then I noticed that this poem had been written in the year I came out, 1976. Adrienne Rich's poetry, along with Audre Lorde's, Judy Grant's, and Pat Parker's, was absolutely vital to my coming out process. It was also absolutely vital to my maintaining a very close relationship with the woman I came out with, who's still one of my closest soulmates today, Robin Ellett. So this poem that Pat circled at some point before me spans this time from my coming out in 76 to me now. It's called Nights and Days, and I'm going to read from it, and then I'm just going to read two very brief poems also from Adrienne's 21 Love Poems. But all of these are for Robin and for Pat, and of course for Adrienne. Nights and Days. The stars will come out over and over. The hyacinths rise like flames from the wind-swept turf down the middle of Upper Broadway where the desolate take the sun. The days will run together and stream into years as the rivers freeze and burn. And I ask myself and you, which of our visions will claim us? Which will we claim? How will we go on living? How will we touch? What will we know? What will we say to each other? Pictures form and dissolve in my head. We are walking in a city you fled, came back to and come back to still, which I saw once through winter frost, years back before I knew you, before I knew myself. We are walking streets you have by heart from childhood, streets you have graven and erased in dreams. Scrolled portals, trees, 19th century statues. We are holding hands so I can see everything as you see it. I follow you into your dreams, your past, the places none of us can explain to anyone. We are standing in the wind on an empty beach. The onslaught of the surf tells me Point Reyes or maybe some northern Pacific shoreline neither of us has seen. In its fine spectral mist, our hair is gray as the sea. Someone who saw us far off would say we were two old women. Norns, perhaps, or sisters of the spray, but our breasts are beginning to sing together. Your eyes are on my mouth. I wake early in the morning in a bed we have shared for years, lie watching your innocent, sacred sleep as if for the first time. We have been together so many nights and days. This day is not unusual. I walk to an eastern window, pull up the blinds. The city around us is still on a clear October morning, wrapped in her indestructible light. The stars will come out over and over. The hyacinths rise like flames from the windswept turf down the middle of Upper Broadway where the desolate take the sun. The days will run together and stream into years as the rivers freeze and burn, and I ask myself and you, which of our visions will claim us? Which will we claim? How will we go on living? How will we touch? What will we know? What will we say to each other? Okay, and then just a couple very, very short, Adrienne's 21 love poems. This is number 7. What kind of beast would turn its life into words? What atonement is this all about? And yet, writing words like these, I'm also living. Is all this close to the wolverine's howled signals, that modulated cantata of the wild? Or when away from you, I try to create you in words, am I simply using you like a river or a war? And how have I used rivers? How have I used wars? To escape writing of the worst thing of all, not the crimes of others, not even our own death, but the failure to want our freedom passionately enough. So that blighted elms, sick rivers, massacres would seem mere emblems of that desecration of ourselves. Finally, in the 21 love poems, she has one that's not numbered. It's called The Floating Poem, Unnumbered. Whatever happens with us, your body will haunt mine, tender, delicate, your lovemaking like the half-curled frond of the fiddlehead fern in forest, just washed by sun. Your traveled, generous thighs between which my whole face has come and come. The innocence and wisdom of the place my tongue has found there, the live, insatiate dance of your nipples in my mouth. Your touch on me, firm, protective, searching me out, your strong tongue and slender fingers, reaching where I had been waiting years for you in my rose-wet cave. Whatever happens, this is.
Hi. My name's Drea Brown. I'm really excited to be here with such fabulous writers honoring someone so amazing. Audre Lorde and Adrienne Rich were also a big part of my coming out process, so I wonder how many of us in the room have that connection. But what is really inspirational about Rich's work for me is the way that she has realizations and reckonings, the way that she turns them over and over until they're sharp enough for you to understand, and the way that she probes and explores the knotted parts. It's very inspirational to my work and is definitely inspirational to read. So I'm going to read 2. I'm going to read The Stranger from Diving into the Wreck. Looking as I've looked before, straight down the heart of the street to the river, walking the rivers of the avenues, feeling the shudder of the caves beneath the asphalt, watching the light turn on in the towers, walking as I've walked before, like a man, like a woman, in the city, my visionary anger cleansing my sight, and the detailed perceptions of mercy flowering from that anger. If I come into a room out of the sharp, misty light and hear them talking a dead language, if they ask me my identity, what can I say but I am the androgyne, I am the living mind you fail to describe in your dead language, the lost noun, the verb surviving only in the infinitive. The letters of my name are written under the eyelids of the newborn child. Right? I'm sorry. I'm also going to read What Kind of Times Are These? There is a place between 2 stands of trees where the grass grows uphill and the old revolutionary road breaks off into shadows near a meeting house abandoned by the persecuted who disappeared into those shadows. I've walked there, picking mushrooms at the edge of dread. But don't be fooled. This isn't a Russian poem. This is not somewhere else but here. Our country moving closer to its own truth and dread, its own ways of making people disappear. I won't tell you where the place is, the dark mesh of the woods meeting the unmarked strip of light. Ghost-ridden crossroads, leaf mold paradise. I know already who wants to buy it, sell it, make it disappear. And I won't tell you where it is. So why do I tell you anything? Because you still listen. Because in times like these, to have you listen at all, it's necessary to talk about trees. Thanks.
Hey, I'm Justin Chen, and I think I was kind of thinking about what to say, and I was jotting down my little notes, and then I just realized that what I kind of needed to say was just really in here already. I'm reading from the essays, the title essay from The Arts of the Possible. It's a small little... Okay. We are not simply trapped in the present. We are not caged within the narrowing corridor at the end of history, nor do any of us have to windsurf on the currents of a system that depends on the betrayal of so many others. We do have choices. We are living through a certain part of history that needs us to live it and make it and write it. We can make that history with many people we will never know. Or we can live in default, under protest perhaps, but neutered in our senses and in our sympathies. We have to keep on asking the questions still being defined as non-questions, the ones beginning why, what if. We will be told that these are childish, naive, pre-postmodern questions. They are the imagination's questions. Writers and intellectuals can name, we can describe, we can depict, we can witness, without sacrificing craft, nuance, or beauty. Above all, and at our best, we may sometimes help question the questions. Let us try to do this, if we do, without grandiosity. Let's recognize, too, without false humility, the limits of the zone in which we work. Writing and teaching are kinds of work, and the relative creative freedom of the writer or teacher depends on the condition of human labor overall and everywhere. For what are we anyway at our best, but one small persistent cluster in a great ferment of human activity, still and forever turning towards, tuned for the possible, the unrealized and irrepressible design.
Hi, I'm Elana Dykewomon, and I have known Adrienne Rich a long time. When I first came to the Women's Center in Northampton in 1971, she was beginning to write and publish. She hadn't quite come out yet. And I remember her reviewing some of the early lesbian journals, Amazon Quarterly and the first Sinister Wisdoms, in the American Poetry Review. And she wrote at that time words to the effect, if my memory serves me right, that the answer to the age-old question of what lesbians do in bed may be that they talk to each other. That talking to each other clearly excited her and moved her. And I first actually met her about 1976 when I went to an apartment in New York, and she agreed to do a benefit reading for my lover at the time, who was a victim of experimental psychosurgery. And she was always there. She was always up for doing a benefit. She was always there to work with, to talk with. We were on same sides and different sides. We were in the same movement at the same time, but she was a generation before me, and I always felt a little bit of awe as well as that comradeship when I went to see her. At one point in my life, I actually owned the printing press that 21 Love Poems was first printed on. The letterpress when I was young and a letterpress printer. And many years later, I became the editor of Sinister Wisdom, which Adrienne and Michelle had been editors of for about 2.5 years in the early 80s, the beginning of the 80s. So tonight I want to read a few things from that, and just the end of a poem from The Will to Change, which is before she came out, but just as she was beginning to imagine a different life. It's from the poem, this first piece is from the poem Planetarium, thinking of Carolyn Herschel, 1750, 1848, astronomer, sister of William, and others. And the last stanza of the poem goes, I have been standing all my life in the direct path of a battery of signals, the most accurately transmitted, most untranslatable language in the universe. I am a galactic cloud so deep, so involuted that a light wave could take 15 years to travel through me, and has taken. I am an instrument in the shape of a woman trying to translate pulsations into images for the relief of the body and the reconstruction of the mind. That's from the late 60s, actually. And when I became the editor of Sinister Wisdom in 1987, Adrienne sent me a poem for my first issue, and I believe it was the last poem she actually published in Sinister Wisdom. And it's called Negotiations, and it is about the long life of the women's movement in various ways. Negotiations. Someday, if someday comes, we will agree that trust is not about safety, that keeping faith is not about deciding to clip our fingernails exactly to the same length or wearing a uniform that boasts our unanimity. Someday, if someday comes, we'll know the difference between liberal laissez-faire pluralism and the way you cut your hair and the way I clench my hand against my cheekbone, both being possible gestures of defiance. Someday, if there's a someday, we will bring food. You'll say, I can't eat what you've brought. I'll say, have some in the name of our trying to be friends. You'll say, what about you? We'll taste strange meat, and we'll admit we've tasted stranger. Someday, if someday ever comes, we'll go back and reread those poems and manifestos that so enraged us in each other's hand. I'll say, but damn, you wrote it so I couldn't write it off. You'll say, I read you always, even when I hated you. So I think that spoke to a lot of our experience, and I just want to close with the ending words of her Notes for a Magazine of the last issue of Sinister Wisdom that she published. Living in a nation increasingly bent on the destruction of its citizens and of all life everywhere, it feels increasingly that personal survival by itself is not survival. What do we mean by liberation? On whose liberation does our own depend? Pinned between the urgency of nuclear danger and the need to build for a long future, much is asked of all of us who care. Thank you.
Gary to the podium. Hi, I'm Robin Ekiss, and I'm a poet, as many of us are here today. I too don't know that I would have become a poet had I not read Adrienne Rich's work. I first read it when I was in college, my freshman year in college. I was taking 2 English classes, Chaucer, and a class with a great scholar whose name is Gertrude Hughes. And Gertrude Hughes introduced me to Adrienne Rich's work, and it was remarkable to me to be reading Chaucer in the morning and then Rich in the afternoon. So you had the wreck and then diving into it. But it's, I mean, we're all here for, I think, many varied different reasons and many similar reasons. But for me, Adrienne Rich's voice was such a modern idiom. I had never read anyone like her. I had never read anyone who gave me license as a writer to speak plainly in that way. And she does. And also the sense that the personal is political, for me, was like discovering gravity. So I wanted to read a poem that's personally meaningful for me and also political. And it's a poem called Song. You're wondering if I'm lonely. Okay, then, yes, I'm lonely. as a plane rides lonely and level on its radio beam, aiming across the Rockies for the blue-strung aisles of an airfield on the ocean. You want to ask, am I lonely? Well, of course, lonely. As a woman driving across country day after day, leaving behind mile after mile little towns she might have stopped and lived and died in. Lonely. If I'm lonely, it must be the loneliness of waking first, of breathing dawn's first cold breath on the city, of being the one awake in a house wrapped in sleep. If I'm lonely, it's with the rowboat ice fast on the shore, in the last red light of the year, that knows what it is, that knows it's neither ice nor mud nor winter light, but wood with a gift for burning.
Hi, my name is Christian Gullette, and I'm also a poet and translator. And so one of the poems, I'm going to read two poems, and one of them is translations from Diving into the Wreck, and the other is one of Adrienne's love poems from a book that I think is called the Penguin Book of Homosexual Verse, but I can't. But I can't actually tell you what it's called, because when I was 19 and found it in a used bookstore, I tore the covers off so my roommates wouldn't know that I had it. And so shortly after that, my college poetry professor, who knew I needed it before I knew I needed it, one day in his office took his copy of Diving into the Wreck off his shelf and said, just drop everything and read it. And after I did that, I swore I would never tear the covers off my books ever again. So, okay. Translations. You show me the poems of some woman my age or younger, translated from your language. Certain words occur: enemy, oven, sorrow. Enough to let me know she's a woman of my time. Obsessed. With love, our subject. We've trained it like ivy to our walls, baked it like bread in our ovens, worn it like lead on our ankles, watched it through binoculars as if it were a helicopter, bringing food to our famine or the satellite of a hostile power. I begin to see that woman doing things, stirring rice, ironing a skirt, typing a manuscript till dawn, trying to make a call from a phone booth. The phone rings unanswered in a man's bedroom. She hears him telling someone else, never mind, she'll get tired. Hears him telling her story to her sister, who becomes her enemy and will in her own time light her own way to sorrow, ignorant of the fact this way of grief is shared, unnecessary, and political. And then I'll finish with poem 16 from her love poems. Across a city from you, I'm with you, just as an August night, moony, inlet warm, sea-bathed. I watch you sleep, the scrubbed, sheenless wood of the dressing table, cluttered with our brushes, books, vials in the moonlight. Or a salt mist orchard, lying at your side, watching red sunset through the screen door of the cabin. G minor Mozart on the tape recorder, falling asleep to the music of the sea. This island of Manhattan is wide enough for both of us, and narrow. I can hear your breath tonight. I know how your face lies upturned, the half-light tracing your generous, delicate mouth, where grief and laughter sleep together. Thank you.
Oh, there are a lot of you back there. Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Killian. I've got some memories, and one of them goes way back when I was a college student, and I wound up at the National Book Award ceremony at Alice Tully Hall in 1974. And I was about 20, and it was more exciting than the Oscars that year, but Thomas Pynchon won the Best Fiction for Gravity's Rainbow. Instead of appearing as himself, he sent Professor Irwin Corey there to come on talking all like nonsense, and half of us fell for it. And the Poetry Award was split, like it was a tie, and Allen Ginsberg won for The Fall of America, and Adrienne Rich won Diving into the Wreck, but she had gotten together with the other women who had been nominated, and they all took the stage. Some of you were probably there. It was tremendously exciting. So Audre Lorde and Alice Walker and Adrienne Rich read this statement. Well, I'll read to you. We, Audre Lorde, Adrienne Rich, and Alice Walker, together accept this award in the name of all of the women whose voices have gone and still go unheard in a patriarchal world, and in the name of those like us who have been tolerated as token women in this culture, often at great cost and in great pain. We believe that we can enrich ourselves more in supporting and giving to each other than by competing against each other, and that poetry, if it is poetry, exists in a realm beyond ranking and comparison. Symbolically, we join together here in refusing the terms of patriarchal competition and declaring that we will share this prize among us to be used as best we can for women. We appreciate the good faith of the judges for this award, but none of us could accept this money for herself, nor could she let go unquestioned the terms on which poets are given or denied honor and livelihood in this world, especially when they are women. We dedicate this occasion to the struggle for self-determination of all women of every color, identification, or derived class. The poet, the lesbian, the mathematician, the housewife, the mother, the dishwasher, the pregnant teenager, the teacher, the grandmother, the prostitute, the philosopher, the waitress, the women who still understand who will understand what we are doing here, and those who will not understand yet. The silent women whose voices have been denied us, the articulate women who have given us the strength to do our work. So you can imagine what that did for me. And I hope I haven't robbed the woman further down on the alphabetical list from reciting it. Ali, next time we'll swap names. That's what it's all about. Patriarchy comes first. But I wanted to tell one more story, and this was like 20 years later here in the Bay Area. And Small Press Traffic, the poetry organization, nonprofit here, was sinking fast. And the idea was that the board decided, let's have a big benefit. Somehow got a big space at Fort Mason. And Dodie Bellamy was like, but who can we get? Well, she called up Adrienne Rich, and she called up Kathy Acker, and said, would you two read with each other? And I don't know, well, it was like, and both of them said pretty much the same thing. I'd love to meet her, because they had never met, but she hates me. So finally they agreed, and the thing happened, and it was an enormous success. And 20 years later, Small Press Traffic's still going strong, thanks to these two. But then you brought out the two to shake hands or whatever, and they were scared stiff of each other. And one said, they were like maybe like as far apart as me and Karen. And Adrienne says, "I won't bite." And Kathy Acker says, "I won't bite." And then Adrienne says, "Much." So thank you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. All of you lovers of poetry and literature gathered together to appreciate the life and the words of power and wisdom and creativity of Adrienne Rich, as I am. And so, as I look out amongst this thriving crowd who will take back with them the delight of the evening and some solid memories of that wonderful married woman and lesbian poet and guider of thoughtful philosophy and words of wisdom to live every day to the max, I say, feminism rocks! I'd like to read one of Adrienne Rich's poems from a recent publication, 2004 is its date. The title of the piece. But first, let me say that as a working poet myself in San Francisco, I enjoy working with the language from the point of view of using as much absurdity, as I can in the working of the complete piece. And so in reading one of Adrienne's offerings that I selected for you this evening, I'm pleased to say that from this piece I intend to sit very thoughtfully for the rest of this year and to try to bring to my own work the kind of complexity and even mystery that's evident in Behind the Motel. A man lies under a car, half bare. A child plays bullfight with a torn cloth. Hemlocks grieve in wraps of mist. A woman talks on the phone, looks in a mirror, fiddling with the metal pull of a drawer. She has seen her world wiped clean, the cloth that wiped it disintegrate in mist, or dying breath on the skin of a mirror. She has felt her life close like a drawer, has awoken somewhere else, bare. He feels his skin as if it were mist, as if his face would show in no mirror. He needs some bolts he left in a vanished drawer, crawls out into the hemlocked world with his bare hands, wipes his wrench on an oil-soaked cloth, stares at the woman talking into a mirror who has shut the phone into the drawer, while over and over with a torn cloth at the edge of hemlocks behind the bare motel, a child taunts a horned beast made from mist.
Hello. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for coming, because my fear when I heard Adrienne Rich died was that she was never going to be heralded to the extreme that she should be, in my mind. My name's Allie Liebegott, and for me, she was probably the most important writer for me, not just at the beginning of my career, but the person whose book, like, I continue to put on my desk when I work on something new. And The Dream of the Common Language is like, I feel like that's Purple Rain. There's like not a bad poem. I mean, that's the thing about Adrienne Rich for me, is all of her books are amazing, and there's no duds. And Kevin Killian, as you could see, he was disguised as a feminist, but we saw what he did, didn't we? I typed this out on a manual typewriter, I'll have you know, because I didn't have time to get to a printer today. But I just think this letter that she wrote and they wrote together, this was like almost 40 years ago. I mean, hello, this is so radical. Audre Lorde, Adrienne Rich, and Alice Walker, and writing this, can we please go back to 1974, like right now? I was 3. But I knew even at 3 what was right. You know what I mean? What was there ever a waitress or a prostitute mentioned in a National Book Award speech? No. And I read Allen Ginsberg's If You Want to Do Something Fun When You Go Home. Don't get nervous, Karen. I'm going to read something really short. But, if you go home, read Allen Ginsberg's acceptance speech the same year. It's like, what, 1974, I was like, just taking in my mother's secondhand smoke. That was what I was doing, This is one of my, and the last thing I'm going to do before, this is actually, I'm organizing a reading. It was really important to me to just continue this celebration of her, and I'm organizing a reading actually at a tattoo shop in Oakland, and we're going to have a marathon Adrienne Rich reading and Adrienne Rich tattoos going all day. So you can find me later and I'll tell you. But actually, I'm getting an excerpt from this poem on myself. It's from an atlas of the difficult world, and this is Dedications. I know you are reading this poem late before leaving your office of the one intense yellow lamp spot and the darkening window in the lassitude of a building faded to quiet long after rush hour. I know you are reading this poem standing up in a bookstore, far from the ocean, on a gray day of early spring, faint flakes driven across the plain's enormous spaces around you. I know you are reading this poem in a room where too much has happened for you to bear, where the bedclothes lie in stagnant coils on the bed and the open valise speaks of flight, but you cannot leave yet. I know you are reading this poem as the underground train loses momentum and before running up the stairs toward a new kind of love your life has never allowed. I know you are reading this poem by the light of the television screen where soundless images jerk and slide while you wait for the newscast from the Intifada. I know you are reading this poem in a waiting room of eyes met and unmeeting, of identity with strangers. I know you are reading this poem by fluorescent light in the boredom and fatigue of the young who are count themselves out at too early an age. I know you are reading this poem through your failing sight, the thick lens enlarging these letters beyond all meaning, yet you read on because even the alphabet is precious. I know you are reading this poem as you pace beside the stove, warming milk, a crying child on your shoulder, a book in your hand, because life is short and you too are thirsty. I know you are reading this poem, which is not in your language, guessing at some words while others keep you reading, and I want to know which words they are. I know you are reading this poem, listening for something torn between bitterness and hope, turning back once again to the task you cannot refuse. I know you are reading this poem because there is nothing else left to read, there where you have landed, stripped as you are.
I'm so glad you read that poem. My name is Toni Mirosevich, and everybody has a story about when, at what time, what period of time you were hit with Adrienne Rich's poetry and what effect that had. So I have one too. Around 1984, 1985, there was a group of us in San Francisco who ended up getting a very strange, weird, new illness. And there was a little cluster. And it was, at that time, it was called Epstein-Barr virus. And then it became, I have to remember, myalgic encephalomyelitis, CFIDS, chronic fatigue syndrome, XMRV, many, 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 many names. And the one very weak joke I have is there's the dream of the common language, but then there's the dream of the accurate diagnosis. So for us, and for all of us who were healthy as horses before then, big, powerful horses, this was a very kind of a huge event in our lives. And suddenly there was the well and there was the sick, and there was a very, very clear dividing line. And it wasn't real cool in the mid-'80s to talk or to say to people that you knew that you had a new mystery virus that you didn't know the trajectory of. And so there became this kind of secret society, and you didn't tell a lot of people, or you told your closest friends, the friends who would not tell you to eat more carrots, or if you would just paint, you wouldn't be depressed. And so we told a friend of my partner's, and her name is, some of you will know her, Ellie Balkan, who Shotzi, my partner, and Ellie taught one of the very early women's poetry classes at Brooklyn College, where they taught Adrienne Rich's work. And we let Ellie know, and Ellie sent a few pages of a manuscript. And I believe, if my memory serves me right, that in fact it was Contradictions, the Tracking Poems. And I don't believe it had been published yet. And I can't tell you what that meant. It was, the body could not be restored, but those poems were restorative in an extraordinary way. Really incredible. So I must have given that book away, and I had to go to the Burlingame Library, and I found Your Native Land, Your Life, which is where Contradictions, Tracking Poems was published. And what I recall was that I had recalled from that manuscript a poem about being some kind of dry desert plant and water coming down. And the body was in great pain. Well, that's not in here. So, The Art of Losing isn't hard to master. And I apparently I thought up that poem, but there are a few poems in here, just a few that I would like to read from Contradictions, Tracking. And again, just so useful for all of us. Number 16. It's true, these last few years I've lived watching myself in the act of loss, the art of losing, Elizabeth Bishop called it. But for me, no art, only badly done exercises, acts of the heart forced to question its presumptions in the world, in mere excitements, acts of the body forced to measure all instincts against pain, acts of parting, trying to let go without giving up. Yes, Elizabeth, a city here, a village there, a sister, comrade, cat, and more. No art to this but anger. It was so wonderful to have poetry come to you that was not about the hope wheel, and that you would be hopeful and cheery and it'd all work out. This was just extraordinary work to get. The problem unstated till now is how to live in a damaged body in a world where pain is meant to be gagged, uncured, ungrieved over. The problem is to connect without hysteria the pain of anyone's body with the pain of the body's world, for it is the body's world they are trying to destroy forever. The best world is the body's world, filled with creatures, filled with dread, misshapen so, yet the best we have, our raft among the abstract worlds, and how I long to live on this earth, walking her boundaries, never counting the cost. And I'm going to end with the last poem in Tracking Poems. Wonderful piece. It's number 29. You who think I find words for everything, this is enough for now. Cut it short. Cut loose from my words. You for whom I write this in the night hours when the wrecked cartilage sifts round the mystical jointure of the bones, when the insect of detritus crawls from shoulder to elbow to wrist bone, remember, the body's pain and the pain on the streets are not the same, but you can learn from the edges that blur. Oh, you who love clear edges more than anything, watch the edges that blur.
Hi, it's an honor to be here tonight. My name is Peter Warner, and I'm going to read a poem of Adrienne Rich's from her collection Leaflets, which came out in 1969. The poem's called The Book, and it's a great poem about those people that in families are sometimes called black sheep. I'm sure there are a few of us in the room tonight. But you know how it is with those people that are, for whatever reason, evicted from their family, either literally or figuratively. You end up being the person that everybody's always thinking about. It's called The Book, and it's for Richard Howard. You, hiding there in your words like a disgrace, the cast-off son of a family whose face is written in theirs, who must not be mentioned, who calls collect 3 times a year from obscure towns out of state, and whose calls are never accepted. You who had to leave alone and forget your shadow hanging under the stars. Let me tell you, I have been in the house. I have spoken to all of them. They will not pronounce your name. They only allude to you, rising and sitting, going or coming, falling asleep and waking, giving away in marriage or calling for water on their deathbeds. Their faces look into each other and see you. When they write at night in their diaries, they are writing to you. Thanks.
Just taking a moment to take you all in. Wow. Nice view. I'm Taya Schaefer, and Karen said very apologetically to me, we're going by the alphabet. I guess as an S, you're kind of used to that. One of the advantages is on my very 1970s poetry separated by gender bookshelves, Rich, Ruckheiser, Schaefer. This didn't mean that the introduction I had planned didn't get blown away, because Elana chose one of the poems I would have chosen in memory of the 70s and our struggles, negotiations often being needed. But I got to choose another poem instead. So I have 2 poems that I'm going to read of hers. And 2 things. First of all, listening to everybody, what was so clear to me is how Adrienne's words adhered to the person who was reading them. You get that? It's like when we were applauding, they were your words we were applauding as well as Adrienne's. And that's why we're applauding Adrienne, right? She really entered us all. Her words became ours. When we spoke them, we were speaking them too. And I teach at College of Alameda, and people are still shocked when I say the word abortion. They're shocked when I say the word lesbian. We have so much to do, so much work that's been done, undone, we're recreating. So I decided to go with a poem from A Wild Patience Has Taken Me This Far. One of the poems she wrote about grandmothers. So she had several, this is the first one. And I do it because people are still living the life that she describes here. And we still have work to do about that. Mary Gravely Jones. We had no pet names, no diminutives for you. Always the formal guest under my father's roof. You were Grandmother Jones, and you visited rarely. I see you walking up and down the garden, restless, southern accented, reserved. You did not seem my mother's mother or anyone's grandmother. You were Mary, widow of William, and no matriarch, yet smoldering to the end with frustrate life. Ideas nobody listened to, least of all my father. One summer night, you sat with my sister and me in the wind glider long after twilight, holding us there with streams of pent-up words. You could quote every poet I had ever heard of, had read The Opium Eater, Amiel and Bernard Shaw. Your green eyes looked clenched against opposition. You married straight out of the convent school. Your background was country. You left an unperformed typescript of a play about Burr and Hamilton. You were impotent and brilliant. No one cared about your mind. You might have ended elsewhere than in that glider, reciting your unwritten novels to the children. And the second poem, this is a poem about breath, among other things. And I use this in class sometimes. And when I do that, we do it as a choral reading. One half doing one breath, one the other. And it is a poem about watching someone die and following the breaths of someone who is dying. Final notations. It will not be simple. It will not be long. It will take little time. It will take all your thought. It will take all your heart. It will take all your breath. It will be short. It will not be simple. It will touch through your ribs. It will take all your heart. It will not be long. It will occupy your thought, as a city is occupied, as a bed is occupied. It will take all your flesh. It will not be simple. You are coming into us who cannot withstand you. You are coming into us who never wanted to withstand you. You are taking parts of us into places never planned. You are going far away with pieces of our lives. It will be short. It will take all your breath. It will not be simple. It will become your will.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Shurin, and I'll be brief, but I have to step out of the bubble for one moment and say that the bar has now been raised for me. I have a new higher standard in that I hope that someday, somewhere, somebody will say a book of mine is like Purple Rain. Ooh. I went to my bookshelf and pulled out A Dream of Common Language, and I looked at it, and it was published in 1978, and I have a first edition from 1978, and that's not because I collect first editions. It's because I bought it in 1978. And in reading it, my first book was published in 1976, and in reading it, I had such a memory of how acutely I felt we were writing with a common purpose. I'm going to read two. I can't believe they're still unread. Two poems from the 21 Love Poems. This is number 2. I wake up in your bed. I know I have been dreaming. Much earlier, the alarm broke us from each other. You've been at your desk for hours. I know what I dreamed. Our friend the poet comes into my room, where I've been writing for days. Drafts, carbons, poems are scattered everywhere. And I want to show her one poem, which is the poem of my life. But I hesitate and wake. You've kissed my hair to wake me. I dreamed you were a poem, I say, a poem I wanted to show someone. And I laugh and fall dreaming again of the desire to show you to everyone I love, to move openly together in the pull of gravity, which is not simple, which carries the feathered grass a long way down the up-breathing air. Number 12. She's sleeping and looking a lot. Number 12. Sleeping, turning in turn like planets, rotating in their midnight meadow. A touch is enough to let us know we're not alone in the universe, even in sleep. The dream ghosts of two worlds walking their ghost towns almost address each other. I've wakened to your muttered words, spoken light or dark years away, as if my own voice had spoken. But we have different voices, even in sleep, and our bodies, so alike, are yet so different. And the past, echoing through our bloodstreams, is freighted with different language, different meanings, though in any chronicle of the world we share, it could be written with new meaning. We were two lovers of one gender. We were two women of one generation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Simmons. Solfeggetto. Your windfall at 15, your Steinway grand paid for by fire insurance, came to me as birthright, a black cave with teeth of ebony and ivory, twanging and thundering over the head of the crawling child until that child was set on the big book on the chair to face the keyboard world of black and white, already knowing the world was black and white. The child's hands, smaller than a sand dollar, set on the keys wired to their mysteries. The child's wits facing the ruled and ruling staves. For years we battled over music lessons, mine taught by you, nor did I wonder what that keyboard meant to you. The hours of solitude, the practicing, your life of prized recitals, lifted hopes, Piatti's nephew praising you at 16, scholarships to the north, or what it was to teach boarding school girls what won't be used, shelving ambition, beating time to On the Ice at Sweetbriar, or the sunken cathedral for a child counting the minutes and the scales to freedom. Freedom. What could that mean for you or me? Summers of 36, 37, Europe untuned. What I remember isn't lessons, not Bach or Brahms or Mozart, but the rented upright in the summer rental, 100 best love songs on the piano rack. And so you played evenings, and so we sang, Steal Away, and Swanee River, swing low, and most of all, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. How we sang out the chorus, how I loved the watchfires of 100 circling camps, and truth is marching on, and let us die to make men free. Piano lessons. The mother and the daughter, their doomed exhaustion, their common mystery worked out in finger exercises. Czerny, Hannon, the Yellow Schirmer albums, quarter rests, double holes, glyphs of an astronomy. The mother cannot teach the daughter because this is not the story of a mother teaching magic to her daughter. Side by side, I see us unlocked. My wrists, your voice are tightened. Passion lives in old songs in the kitchen where another woman cooks, teaches, and sings. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. And in the book-lined room where the Jewish father reads and smokes and teaches Ecclesiastes, Proverbs, the Song of Songs, the daughter struggles with the strange notations, dark chart of music's ocean, flower and flags, but would rather learn by ear and heart. The mother says she must learn to read by sight, not ear and heart. Thank you.
Hello, I am Arisa White, and I'm in love with Adrienne Rich. I'm going to read ritual acts from The School Among the Ruins. Ritual acts. We are asking for books. No, not, but a list of books to be given to young people. Well, to young poets to guide them in their work. He gestures impatiently. They won't read, he says. My time is precious. If they want, they'll find whatever they need. I'm going for a walk after lunch. After that, I lie down. Then and only then do I read the papers. Mornings are for work, the proofs of the second volume, my trilogy, and he nods, and he too nod, recognition. 2. The buses packed since the subways are forbidden and the highways forsaken, so people bring everything on, what they can't do without. Air conditioners, sculpture, double baskets of babies, fruit platters, crematory urns, sacks of laundry, of books, inflated hearts, bass fiddles, bridal gowns in plastic bags, pet iguanas, oxygen tanks, the tablets of Moses. 3. After all, to have love, wasn't that the object? Love is the only thing in life, but then you can love too much or the wrong way. You lose yourself, or you lose the person, or you strangle each other. Maybe the object of love is to have loved greatly at one time or another, like a cinema trailer watched long ago. 4. You need to turn yourself around, face in another direction. She wrapped herself in a flag, soaked it in gasoline, and lit a match. This is for the murdered babies, they say, she said. Others heard for the honor of my country. Others remember the smell and how she screamed. Others say this was just theater. 5. This will not be a love scene, but an act between two humans. Now please let us see you tenderly scoop his balls into your hand. You will hold them under your face. There will be tears on your face. That will be all, the director said. We will not see his face. He wants to do the scene, but not to show his face. 6. A goat devouring a flowering plant, a child squeezing through a fence to school, a woman slicing an onion, a bare foot sticking out, a wash line tied to a torn-up tree, a dog's leg lifted at a standpipe, an old man kneeling to drink there, a hand on the remote. We would like to show, but to not be obvious, except to the oblivious. We want to show ordinary life. We are dying to show it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jewel Gomez, and I'm the president of the San Francisco Public Library Commission. So before I read my last poem, the last poem, I just want to say a couple of things. One is welcome to our fabulous library and the fabulous Hormel Center, and I hope you'll support it and use it online or in person whenever you can, because it's only alive, if people are using it. And Karen does a lot of hard work to keep it alive, so I want to say thank you to Karen and her staff. Yeah. I did want to mention, I think Sinister Wisdom is going to do an issue devoted to Adrienne. So, check online and see what's up with that. I also wanted to say, you're in the room where I was married to my partner, Diane. And so it's so exciting. I could get married again in front of you all. It's really great. I first met Adrienne in the mid-'80s. Audre Lorde introduced us. Adrienne and Audre did a reading for the Estrella Lesbian Foundation when it was first starting. It was before the word lesbian was even in the name. because at that time, we couldn't put the word lesbian in the name because so many people would be afraid to apply to it in 1983. So I remember thinking how twinkly Adrienne was, how funny she was, and that I actually understood her poems. It was like, whoa, okay, I like her. I'm going to call out something that my friend Ruby mentioned, which I noticed when I came in. So many people here are, how shall I put this, of my generation. I see a lot of white hair, some blue. I like it. I like it. I'm glad we're still around to celebrate and remember. But I'll give you some homework. It would be really great if all of us here could pick a poem and pick a person we know who's not gray-haired, who's under our age, and send it to them. Write it out, mail it to them, email it to them, slip it under their door, put it in a book you're going to give them. However, because the connectivity between generations, there is no institution to pass on these words, this energy, this community that Adrienne so believed in. And if we don't do it, if we don't find ways of doing it, it's lost to us. Everyone spoke about the sense of Adrienne inspiring them. And she inspired us because she believed in community. She believed she was connected to everyone who believed in social change, everyone who believed in the power of words. And we have to carry that on because there is no school that will do that for us. And it's pretty easy to do. I mean, you can bore your friends any old kind of way, but you can only send them a poem and just sparkle them up like Adrienne sparkled us. You will have done a lot of work for social change. The final thing I'll read is from 21 Love Poems, number 3, and I read it because at a certain age, these are the things we think about. Since we're not young, weeks have to do time for years of missing each other. Yet only this odd warp in time tells me we're not young. Did I ever walk the morning streets at 20, my limbs streaming with a purer joy? Did I lean from any window over the city, listening for the future as I listened here with nerves tuned for your ring? And you move toward me with the same tempo. Your eyes are everlasting, the green spark of the blue-eyed grass of early summer, the green-blue wild cress washed by the spring. At 20, yes, we thought we'd live forever. At 45, I want to know even our limits. I touch you knowing we weren't born tomorrow. And somehow, each of us will help the other live. And somewhere, each of us must help the other die. Thank you so much for celebrating with us. Celebration must continue. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everyone, for coming, and thanks again to these wonderful poets and writers for being here tonight.